This is a podcast from the Queen City Podcast Network.
Hope. Sometimes we need help finding it. And sometimes that help comes in the form of stories of people who've lost it and found it yet again. That's why we're here. Welcome to Hope with Ramona Holloway. Welcome to Hope with Ramona Holloway. Our guest today was a mess from Myers Park. But now I can introduce her as the queen of dramatizing the most mundane life events. I can introduce her as a professional overthinkers award winner and also a woman whose skills include Olympic level rumination. But she's no longer a mess. She is all about empowering youth. She's all about being an amazing mom. And her name is Molly Barker. Molly, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Do you remember the first time that we met?
I do.
It was at a dinner. You were being honored. Mm-hmm. A Child's Place.
That's right.
I think they're now a part of Thompson Child and Family Services. But, because of the work with Girls on the Run, you were being honored and you got up. And I remember my ears perking up when you talked about the Black woman who raised you.
Yeah. So I grew up in that era when Black women were often the primary caregivers of young people that grew up in Myers Park. And Jenny was the woman who really just made sure I was okay. Mm-hmm.
What about your mom?
So my mom, was a hot mess. So they lived in Myers Park. So I followed quite, conveniently in her footsteps. So my mom was struggling with alcohol addiction. And for the first 10 years of my life, just was clearly doing the best that she could. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of unintended neglect, So she was just trying to hold her own mental health together. And I was the last of the 4 kids, so,
Hence, Jenny stepping up and being that figure. Mm-hmm. What's it like to be a kid with a mom who's an alcoholic?
Yeah, so, Ramona, I'm working on a memoir. I've been working on it for 5 years, and I've been thinking a lot, ruminating.
You?
Ruminating on this. Why? It's taken 5 years. And, it's for me, and it's pretty normal for a lot of kids of alcoholics, I did not want anybody to know what was going on at home. So I tried to be the symbol of perfection at school. So straight A student. I didn't want anybody to come home or know there was anything happening there. So you wouldn't have known anything. But,
not even your teachers, you don't think that they
I think one
noticed
teacher
anything?
knew. One of my teachers knew, but I don't think the rest did. I kept it pretty well hidden. I was always getting myself ready for school. I walked to school, made my own lunches, because it was just sort of hit or miss whether my mom would be available for that. Yeah.
So you told me that you were still a child when she got sober. How did life change?
It was, I've described it as going from like black and white to Technicolor. It was dramatic and it happened pretty quickly. I think my mom had tried several times to get sober. I don't know how many, but the final time that she did was in January of 1970. And she started getting help. She went to a place called the Randolph Clinic, which is now Anuvia, I think.
Anuvia.
And, she was an outpatient, and she just, her wings unfurled. So she was of a much earlier generation than me, where women were tamped down. Don't be big, don't speak your mind. And I think drinking was a way for her to cope with that. But the minute she stopped, she began to the light that was her began to shine much brighter. And, I got to witness that, which was just incredible.
You witnessed that,
Mm-hmm.
yet you found yourself basically homeless because of an alcohol addiction. Like, how do you watch that transformation and then choose to follow in your mother's alcoholic footsteps?
I know. Go figure.
Somebody, you might think it's genetic or something.
I know.
Is there a
What's
genetic
going on?
component?
So again, in writing this book, realized that the first time I drank was more out of curiosity. It wasn't like I felt like I needed to do it to fit in or anything. It was just like, I wonder, everybody else is doing this.
And they're making such a big deal about it.
And it seemed like it was fun. Like, I just wonder what that's like. And I think a lot of alcoholics would say that the minute that alcohol hit my system, I liked so much how it felt, because all of the trauma that I'd grown up with and that anxiety that I was still not grappling with.
Because you're a little kid hiding a secret.
It just got quiet. And that was so intoxicating, right? It was like, oh, is this what peace is? But I think it was more about numbing. So I think there's a distinction between alcohol being used to numb versus finding peace, And for me, I conflated those two things. Numbing and feeling peace were the same thing, and they're actually not. But yeah, I remember that. And it was like, oh, this feels good.
When did you learn the difference between numbing and peace? And what does that look like to you?
Yes, I think I discovered more about peace after I got sober. I think for many years I was just chasing peace, looking for it in all the external things. Oh, if I ride my bike, if I do this race, if I marry this guy, or, have sex with this person.
Sounds like you were running on endorphins.
Yes. And all the while still drinking. That's the thing. It's like, oh, I gotta, if I get there, then I'll feel peace, not recognizing that it was like available all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So once I got sober and got sort of in with some other people, that I'd look at them and I'd be like, I like what they have.
Mm-hmm.
They seem kind of like they're at peace. And I just listened and learned from them. Yeah. So
you built this amazing organization, Girls on the Run, empowers young women. And then you walk away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
So I've still sort of wondered about that myself. I think a lot of it is I'm an innovator. I like to make things up, and I like to challenge myself, and I like to go outside my comfort zone, and I also don't like to be boxed in. And as the organization is growing, it didn't need me as much. It's just like a child, It's funny, I was saying to you beforehand that my son was 9 months old when I had this, and I left the org when it was about teenage, a little bit older than teenage. It's like it needed to be able to survive without me as its mother. And it was just time to go.
Has it been hard to let go?
It was really hard in the beginning, although I wouldn't have admitted that. Yeah, and I think some of the folks that were working there would be like, I thought you said you were leaving. And I just was like,
do you think you got hard to work with?
I think the hard to work with was I was constantly trying to maybe innovate or change things, and it was working.
Right.
It's like, why, if it ain't broke, don't fix it,
Hey, I've got a new idea.
Yes, exactly, which can be very exhausting. Yeah. I was constantly doing that, actually, and I think that could get exhausting for people.
Okay, so do you no longer thirst? Or to create, to innovate?
No, I'm still always thinking about ruminating again, overthinking. So certainly working on this memoir has been helpful, because it does feel like a creation. I'm creating something. I've done some other work helping some nonprofits in the creation of their curriculum. I'm a new grandmother, so every day is a creation with my granddaughter, So I still have that. I'm not as ambitious as I once was, though.
So what's the challenge now?
The challenge is being okay with not being as ambitious as I used to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think sometimes I I go, what's wrong with me? Like, I'm actually really happy drinking coffee and watering my plants for 2 hours first thing in the morning. Whereas in the past, it would have been like, get the coffee, go for the workout, do the thing,
Yeah,
And I have
get
to
it.
constantly remind myself, hey, wait a minute. I can do what I want at this stage of my life,
Yeah. So you're experiencing what people call freedom.
Exactly. And peace. Although this is the funny thing. It's like the peace is, I still struggle with that because the minute I start to be like, oh, this is peace, I'm like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
Because,
and you start building it up again.
Yes, like there's something wrong because I'm feeling peace.
Better make something happen.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So what is your process? I mean, how do you get to that place of peace? What does Molly Barker do? We know that you went through something, a lot of somethings to get here.
Yeah. I have people that help me. I have a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I have a coach that has helped me. I think the biggest...
Is your therapist also your coach?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. So you've got a life coach and you got a therapist. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I think the big thing that I keep reminding myself every day is, the question that I ask myself is, what do I want to do today? Not what should I do today, or what do I need to do today, or what ought I do today? It's what do I want to do? And then ask myself, is what I want, is it truly what I want, or am I just trying to fulfill some expectation of some narrative that's old and worn out? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but yeah. I guess I just look at you and I see this woman who is so incredibly accomplished. Like, to hear that you don't have all the superpowers is a little mind-blowing because of everything you've done. And I can imagine that sometimes it trips you out to look back on how far you've come.
Yeah. What trips me out is the number of girls that have been served by the org. It's over, I think it's 2.5 million now or something. It's just insane like that. And I can remember when I was newly into it 3 or 4 years, having visions of it being that large, but I would never say it out loud. It was too grandiose to think like that. That blows my mind. That is very hard to comprehend.
What do you hope for those girls?
Oh, the same thing that I hope for my granddaughter, even for myself, is imagine what it would be like. Really, if you just absolutely loved yourself the way you were,
Yeah. I believe that when we do a better job of loving ourselves, then we're doing those things for ourselves that we would do for a kid.
Exactly.
Like, you're not, I want to take great care of you. I want to feed me properly and water me properly and walk me properly. I believe that that's a part of self-love that goes beyond what we now, in fluffy terms, call self-care.
Right. Right. It's deeper than that.
Yeah.
It's like a profound acceptance of oneself. And, in writing this book, one of the things that's become really clear to me is there are seasons to my life. And I used to be hard on myself for being so driven, slow yourself down, it didn't matter whether I was driven or whether I am not driven. I was constantly hard on myself.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm doing too much.
Yes.
I'm not doing enough.
Exactly. Yes.
You have no Molly off switch.
That's right.
You're going hard on Molly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I look back, and as I'm writing this book, I'm like, you know what? I kind of really liked going all out. I actually did. I loved getting up at 5 a.m. and drinking the coffee and going for the run and, doing all that. That's just where I was at that time. It's not where I'm at now. So it's like learning to just love all the seasons of my life and not be so hard on the Molly through the lens that I have now.
Is this lens a result of working on the memoir?
For sure. Yeah. And also moving to that little town of Marfa. Yeah. So
That was mind blowing. Like all of
Yeah.
a sudden one day I see on Facebook
Yeah.
that you're to this city girl.
yeah.
She's moving to the wilderness out where?
I know it was weird for me too, but you know, the decision was made pretty quickly. It was not impulsive, but pretty quick. And so I moved to this little town in far west Texas called Marfa. It's like a quirky artistic spot. Maybe 1,100 people live there. The nearest airport is 3 hours away. You know. And I need to acknowledge the privilege that I have in being able to just get up and leave like that, you know. And I remember about 3 weeks in, I woke up one morning, Ramona, I'd never asked myself this. I was like, oh my God, what do I want to do today? You know, like really, I have no one, I have no child asking me to do something, no.
That freaks a lot of moms out.
Yes.
Big time. Like the empty nesters are like,
Right.
whoa, what's
Yeah.
my purpose?
That's what I was grappling with while I was there, I think, you know. If I'm not the founder of Girls on the Run, I'll always be the founder. But if I'm not actively, if I'm not a mother, if I'm not, competing for something in an athletic, what do I actually want to do? And I ended up coloring. I actually went to the grocery store and bought really good food. I've never been a cooker.
Okay.
And I said, I want to cook something delicious.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watched, what is it when you watch a Netflix show over and over?
Oh, you binge watched TV?
Netflix.
It doesn't necessarily sound like a spiritual retreat, but I guess it was for you. We get to define
what I
it
wanted
is
to do.
for us.
I know.
So you came back to us different?
I think I came back. What did I come back as? More. I think I came back more alive, I guess. Less attached to the roles and things. I mean, I do those things, but I am not those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's been very liberating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there nothing that you struggle with?
So I still struggle with anxiety. So that's my primary mental challenge, I guess. And that comes honestly from growing up in an alcoholic home. I mean, it's quite normal. You're in fight or flight all the time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I have to deal with that, which means I can start to feel it. It sort of shows up in my belly, you know? And
can you recognize it now?
yeah, I know. Yeah.
And then what do you do?
Fortunately, I'm surrounded by enough people that if I've promised to do something with them, I can call and say, today's not the day. I need to, chill out, do some deep breathing, go to yoga, throw the ball with my dogs, and that is something I could have never asked for or had the courage to ask for, even 10 years ago. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does.
I think of you as a friend like that. If we had something planned, I could call you and say, I'm sorry, Ramona, today's not the day.
I just can't do it today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that person knows it's not about them.
Yes,
it's
totally.
not about whether or not you feel they're important or wasting their time.
Right.
That friend knows
Mm-hmm.
that you need to take care of yourself in that moment. Perhaps you overcommitted.
That's right.
Perhaps you're just not in a space to
Mm-hmm.
socialize.
Mm-hmm. Now, if it was something professional in a speaking engagement, I would tough it through,
Right.
and I'd be all right. But yeah, if it's just like go have lunch or even a meeting, like with you or a friend,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and that saying no is another thing that I came back from Marfa with. I'm so good at saying no.
Girl, I had a whole year of no in 2007. It was awful.
Mm-hmm.
Because all I did was say no to
Yeah.
a couple of things and then I felt guilty.
Yeah, I know.
So what do you do with that guilt that you get when you say no? Or is
I
there
don't
no
feel it
guilt
anymore.
anymore?
I don't feel it anymore. That might be being close to mid-60s at this point. I just don't feel guilty at all anymore. I also don't feel guilty about the clothes that I wear or I don't feel guilty about a lot of things. Do you know what I mean? I just don't. That is also very liberating. Yeah, I mean, if I'm a jerk to somebody, I don't know that I feel guilty about that. I feel bad about it and hope to apologize if I've ever done that when I do that. But yeah.
The name of the book?
Running Home. Yeah. Yeah.
When can we expect to be able to read it?
I don't know. I keep thinking I'm close to finishing. I hope to have the book done by mid-January, the end of this month. And then we go into the whole process of pitching it to publishing companies and kind of seeing who will be interested in it. So it could probably be, I don't know, 9 months, a year.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Are you concerned about anybody in your family reading your truth?
No, because they all know it. Yeah. And my sisters were also, in addition to Jenny, primary caregivers, and so they're definitely part of the story. Mm-hmm. I mean, they went through it too.
Yeah.
What they didn't get was the sober mom because they were so much older than me. Yeah.
So now your children have never had a mom who was not sober.
Right. It's trippy to think about. Yeah. And
But have you shared that story with them?
Oh, yeah. They know it. Yeah.
So you're not one of those moms who said, what I did when I was younger, you don't need to know.
No. So that's another part of this book is I was very, very conscious of creating a home that was where full expression was allowed. And it's like what I do at Girls on the Run. I mean, these two things were simultaneously happening, creating a place of belonging for girls. And I swore that I would do the same thing in my home. So my kids are my best friends and they're cool and we talk about everything. And I think they felt like they could talk about everything with me.
So you've talked to them about depression when you were drinking, Wow.
Yeah. Actually, they probably won't know more about my life than I know about theirs. So it's funny. Sometimes, so they're 29 and 26. We will go to dinner, the whole family, and they'll start to tell the stories of like when they were teenagers and some of the stuff they did, and I'm like, I had no idea. And they just, laugh because, we all have stories we need to tell eventually, right? Yeah, so I did the same with my mom too. And she'd be like, I didn't know that was happening. So, yeah.
And you think your mom will be okay with this book?
Oh, she will definitely be okay with it. Yeah. My mother was one of the first. So she got sober in 1970 and became very outward facing about it, which was very radical at the time because, it was very taboo to admit that you had any sort of addiction. She was in a documentary on women and addiction. I think it was 1980 or something.
Wow.
Yeah, with Betty Ford. Who had the Betty Ford Center. And
right.
Yeah, she was just very open. So, which was such a blessing gift to me, I don't know that I know any other way.
You are a blessing to so many. Do you have any advice for that girl, no matter where she lives, whether it's the manicured tree-lined streets of Myers Park or somewhere else that isn't quite as fancy? That girl who's a mess right now. What would you say to her? The younger you.
Yeah. I mean, if she were sitting with me right now, I would say, actually, I might not say much. I would just listen. I would just listen. So I guess my advice would be, if possible, find those people that listen to you without judgment and that you are loved by them and can fully express yourself, Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because I had those people in my life from very young all the way to my sobriety. I still have them. And I honestly believe that it was that they loved me before I could love myself, and they saw me before I could see myself. They loved me into sobriety. Does that make sense? Yeah, I know there's the whole tough love, thing, and that didn't work for me. It's not bad or good, it just didn't. So I just say, go where you feel love.
We all have different learning styles.
We do, for sure.
Molly, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Molly talked about how her mom got help at a place that's now called Anuvia, ANUVIA, anuvia.org. They offer mental health counseling and addiction treatment for alcoholics and people addicted to other drugs. That's anuvia.org. Thanks for sharing hope with me. If you'd like to connect, go to RamonaHolloway.com. You can find me on my socials. Once again, Ramona Holloway. And if you'd like to support this podcast, guess what? RamonaHolloway.com.
QueenCityPodcastNetwork.com.